In this video, I'm going to attempt to convince you to read Warbreaker by Brandon Sanderson. This is so good. I just finished rereading this book for the second time. I originally read this 7 years ago, absolutely loved it then, and I loved it still. It was 5 stars back then, it's 5 stars now, and I always recommend this book. Let me start by addressing some objections that you may have. This is one of Brandon's older books. It came out in 2009. His writing does get better. I hear some bookstagrammers, book talkers, booktubers complaining about his prose. It does get better, but honestly, he is an amazing storyteller. And me personally, as a reader, that's what I go into a book for. I want great characters. I want great story. If the writing is great, wonderful. Is it necessary? No, I can still enjoy a story. I can still enjoy the characters without the writing being exactly perfect. Now, Brandon Sanderson, he is a master of his craft. He is known as the king of fantasy for a very good reason. He is my #1 favorite author. He is an auto-buy author. I don't care. If he wrote it, I'm buying it. I will admit, when I first read this, it was my first fantasy novel pretty much ever, reading as an adult. I was very closed-minded to the magic system. That was something that I had to overcome, and I'm so glad I stuck it out because if I'm being totally honest, when I first started reading this 7 years ago, I almost DNF'd it only because I couldn't get on board with the magic system. Stick it out. If you're having those DNF-like feelings, push through it. I promise it's 100% worth it. This is such a work of art. During my first read through, I didn't really consider this a political book, but there is a ton of political intrigue, a ton of subterfuge. It's just really quite fun. The magic system is extremely unique. I don't think you will ever have experienced anything like it. I just gotta say, the characters, oh my gosh, the characters. It is very difficult for me to select a favorite, but my mind keeps circling back to Lightsong. I love the dude. He is hilarious. His banter with Blushweaver can get out of control in such a wonderful way. This is such a fun story, and it's hard to describe because it follows a lot of different main characters. I would say that probably the main plot line, maybe, is that we have a princess named Ciri from Idris. I was pronouncing it Idris, by the way, but I think it's pronounced Idris. Now, she gets shipped off to Hollindren in order to marry the very mysterious God King. He's very enigmatic. Not many know much about him, but he is a very powerful dude. She is sent to Hollindren to marry this man. And what unfolds there is not at all what she expected, nor what the reader would expect whatsoever. The princesses from Idris are trying to prevent all-out war between Hollindren and Idris. Now, Princess Vivenna is kind of on her own separate journey to try to stall the war efforts or stop them altogether. So you also follow her character with also a very important character named Vasher, who is very unique and eccentric in his own way. He has a sentient sword. He is definitely amusing and aggressively wanting to destroy evil. That's his main objective. You also have the mercenaries. That's Tonk Fa and Denth. They are so funny. The way that they talk with each other is nothing short of hilarious. You have the Court of Gods, where all of these folks are considered returned. They are people who have died and were somehow selected to return. So they rule over Hollindren. They are just below the God King. Brandon Sanderson is known for his twists and turns. There are several moments in here that will catch you off guard. Not to say that Brandon Sanderson lacks foreshadowing. When the reveals finally come to you, you'll think, oh, I should have saw it coming, but I didn't. And I have to admit, I read this 7 years ago. While I remember most of the plot, there were still moments that caught me off guard 100%. I go, oh my gosh, I didn't remember that. And I missed it again. Even though there were hints, there was foreshadowing, there were moments that I should have picked up on earlier. But darn it, Brandon, you have done it again. I felt so invested right off the bat. It's such a fun experience. Now, this currently is a standalone book. So if you're looking to get into Brandon Sanderson, if you're looking for a fantasy story that's not a huge commitment because you know he has the Stormlight Archive, which Stormlight #5, Wind and Truth, is coming out this December. I'm super excited. But if you want to start small, which this is not a small book, this is 652 pages, Every page is worth it. The way Brandon Sanderson writes, everything is intentional. Everything happens for a reason. There's not a lot of fluff. It's not just, oh, he did this because he did this. Everything has a purpose. Everything has a very specific intention behind it. And it is so well thought out. The characters are so well fleshed out. I just love everything about it. I don't have a single complaint about it. Do I? No, I don't. I don't have a single complaint. More people need to read this book. I feel like it's severely underrated. And why is that? Maybe because it's older and he's written newer things that people have really come to love, which I love all of his books. I've read almost everything by Brandon Sanderson, but this is still my number one. This is the first book I ever read of his, and I thought about it all the time. I was desperately wanting to reread it for such a long time, and I finally did it, and I'm so glad that I did. I enjoyed it just as much, if not maybe even a little bit more, the second read through. There's so many little things that happen throughout that come together in the end, as is tradition with Brandon Sanderson. There's a reason they call it the Sanderlanche, because he builds, and then everything just blows up in a really good way. I mean that positively. If you like character development, you will find that in this book. You will absolutely find that in this book. Every character goes through experiences that significantly change them. It's believable, it's relatable, it's fun, it's just page turning. You can't stop. I have very little time to read with my chaotic lifestyle, but I made time for this. This took me 3 weeks, which that's a long time, but it's also a longer book. This is 652 pages. So I'm actually proud that I got it done within a 3-week time period. Long story short, I will always recommend this book for so many reasons. I will always consider this to be my comfort read. Sometimes when I just can't figure out what to read next, this is what I turn to. Okay, the one bad thing, I guess the only complaint that I have of this book, is it puts me in a major reading slump. I finished this a couple days ago. I have yet to start and commit to another book. Oh, I have tried. I'm usually back to back with my books. I like to finish a book, start a book, finish a book, start a book, over and over and over again until the end of time. Well, I have tried. It's been extremely difficult. I've been wanting to go back to Going Postal by Terry Pratchett. I got about a third of the way through this and it just wasn't the right time, but I've been dying to come back. I really was enjoying this. It depended on my mood and I wasn't in the right mood. I tried to read this again. No, didn't work. I tried. I've had Tolkien on my list for so long. It's hard to call myself a fantasy lover without having read any Tolkien. That's embarrassing, and I feel like a fraud of a reader. I feel like a fraud for being a fantasy lover. Anyways, I read the first chapter, just couldn't get into it, was extremely bored. I'm going to try to push through, but I really don't know. Maybe it's just not the right time. Also read a couple pages of Dracula because that's also been on my TBR. Couldn't do it. Now, I was able to get through the yellow wallpaper, but because, come on, it's a 30-page short story. So I was able to get through it. I didn't really enjoy it, again, because I'm in a slump. I think had I read this at a different time, I probably would have enjoyed it. This was not the right time, but I was desperately trying to add another book to my August reads, and this was short. I knew I could do it. I got through it in a day and a half. This altogether is like 62 pages. I think there is a introduction as well as an afterword. So yeah, I read it. I rated it 3 stars, which I think it's probably deserving of more, but again, I'm in this slump and it's kind of ruining my reading life. So there it is. That is the one drawback to reading Warbreaker by Brandon Sanderson. If you're looking to get into Sanderson, start with one of his standalones. I highly, highly recommend Warbreaker. Elantris is great too. That one's wonderful. Or even Rhythmatist. That's a standalone as of right now. I would love to read a sequel or a prequel to this. I would love it. I don't know if that's in the books for the very near future, but I'm hopeful that he will write one day. I would love it. So anyways, I hope this video convinced you to read Brandon Sanderson. If you have yet to do so, feel free to subscribe to the channel, stay up to date on bookish content. Let me know if you have read Warbreaker. What were your thoughts? It's funny, I hear a lot of complaints about Warbreaker because it is one of his older books. There are Sanderson books that are really, really popular and really, really good also. Now, a lot of people don't really like this one. I don't know why. I don't get it. I love it. If you have read this, please share your thoughts with me. I would love to have a conversation with you about Warbreaker. Whether or not you loved it, I hope you loved it. I really do. And I hope that I have convinced you to read this. If I have done that, I will call that a win. Please leave me a comment and let me know what you think, whether or not you liked it, fell in love with it, want to reread it. I hope so. If you've made it this far, thanks for sticking with me. I love these little bookish rants. Now I'll catch you on the flip side.